Good evening, all of you. Nice to be with you again. And this time we will be doing Chapter 2, Economic Survey, Fiscal Development. That is the name of the chapter. The good thing about this chapter is that a lot of the discussions on trends we have already done in our budget. A very good evening to all of you joining me now. And you are sending me all messages. Jai Shri Ram, Sat Shri Akal, good evening, all of you. So very nice and great to be with you all. So what we will do right now is we will cover on chapter 2, and again the objective will be to understand the mains and the prelims perspective. From prelims point of view, you should expect the trend based question, which expenditure went up, which expenditure came down, that kind of a question, or which deficit has gone up and deficit trends and so on. So now again they say that in fiscal policy, they say fiscal policy, again, agile approach has been used. We discussed agile approach yesterday, I hope you recall. Agile approach has been used, that you see what are the changes that are happening. Agile approach का मतलब आप ये देखते हो कि क्या बदलाव आ रहे हैं और उन बदलाव की probability count करते हो और उसके हिसाब से अपने निर्णय लेते हो real time information में. So agile approaches, you see what kind of changes are coming in and you take your decision real time information based on the probability of events that are happening. So that is fiscal policy with agile approach, is again what the economic survey says, that rather than having a waterfall approach, that is rather than having an approach of knowing everything and then pre-deciding, we go for an agile approach. That is one aspect that they bring across. And they give you examples of agile approach. They say that in the initial days, initially when there was a COVID pandemic and we were affected badly, then in initial days the government focused more on protecting people through fiscal support by giving a Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, Anna Yojana, and doing a Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, MSME getting credit from the government side. So this was initially done, and gradually as the pandemic went on receding, it was more and more about capital expenditure. So initial policy was survival oriented, and gradually more push on capital expenditure. In fact, government has increased its capital expenditure by a very great amount in the last 3 years. That is what economic survey also commented on, that government has increased its capital expenditure by a large amount in the last 2-3 years, is what the survey also suggests. And survey says that even in 2021, when we had the second bout of COVID, even in 2021, when we had the second bout of COVID, the second attack of COVID, after that in June 2021, again the government came up with more stimulus package with around 6.29 lakh crore, including loan guarantee scheme. So again remember that once we saw that there is a COVID attack, the survey says that June 2021, after second wave, again government brought in the new stimulus package of around 6,929,000 crore. This was brought in June 2021 to fight the second wave. These are all things said by them to suggest that the objective of the government is to fight the pandemic and fight the problems as the situations arise. And they said that it included many things, but most importantly there was loan guarantee scheme. Now remember, when we talk about the loan guarantee scheme, that is about making sure that government can arrange collateral free loans. सरकार जो है वो बिना किसी सिक्योरिटी के लोन अरेंज कर सके, तो 1,10,000 करोड़ तो यही था. 1,10,000 crore was the loan guarantee scheme. 1,10,000 crore was the loan guarantee scheme. And then there was the emergency credit linked guarantee scheme for especially MSME, and the government sanctioned another 1,50,000 crore in this emergency credit linked guarantee scheme. Again, from your prelims point of view, these major expenditures that the government did immediately are important. And then the free food grain provision, under PM JKY, free food grains in Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, this was another around 93,000 crore. ये थोड़े बहुत ट्रेंड्स याद रख लो, so that अगर प्रीलिम्स में कोई क्वेश्चन आया कि जो पहला पैकेज दिया गया था सेकेंड पैंडेमिक के बाद, उसमें हाईएस्ट शेयर किसका था, सेकेंड हाईएस्ट किसका था, वो ट्रेंड हमें पता होना चाहिए. That if they ask you a question, if they ask you a question about after prelims exam, in the prelims exam, that what was the major source on which government made expenditures during the second wave of the pandemic, then these are the major sources. And also the government gave subsidy for export insurance cover, so boost to export insurance, that is giving insurance to exporters, so in case of any uncalled loss they can be helped. So that was another 88,000 crore. These 3-4 things you can keep in mind, that this was during the COVID pandemic second wave that the government focused on. So on the first 3-4 pages of the chapter, this is the only important thing that you should keep in mind. पहले 3-4 पेजेस में यही एक ट्रेंड का जो टेबल है वो इंपॉर्टेंट है, और कुछ जानने की जरूरत नहीं, क्योंकि कुछ पूछा नहीं जा सकता. जो वाटरफॉल अप्रोच है और जो अजाइल अप्रोच है वो आप जान ही चुके हो. सो दैट इज द बेसिक आइडिया ऑन द फर्स्ट 3-4 पेजेस. देन रिमेंबर what they can ask us in prelims further is the trend variables, and these trends mostly I have covered with you, but I will give you some conclusions further. 4-5 points मैं आपको दे रहा हूं कि जो कुछ particular trends हैं वो clear होना चाहिए हमारा कि उनकी movement कैसे रही है. That what is the movement of some particular trends, that should be clearer for us. So remember, we talk here on trends seen in fiscal parameters. Again, from prelims point of view, there have been questions in the past exams when they have asked us whether revenue deficit, they'll give you a statement. Revenue deficit has been continuously rising in India in the last few years. Fiscal deficit has been continuously falling in India in the last few years. So you have to keep in mind that what is the trend that we have observed in revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, primary deficit in Indian context. That is the point. That is the point. So when you look at the trend variables, emergency credit line guarantee scheme, emergency credit line guarantee scheme, Vikash, is given to the MSMEs for the purpose of giving them loan guarantees for meeting their requirements of working capital. All right, then when you look at this, when we look at the trends seen in fiscal parameters, first thing, so when it comes to the deficit concepts, revenue deficit, that is difference between revenue expenditure and revenue receipts of the government has increased between 2019-20 to 2020-21 and decreased in 21-22. So the trend is went up, came down. In 2019, it again increased drastically in 2021, has come down in 21-22. Similarly, the second trend is fiscal deficit, that is borrowing requirements of the government, fiscal deficit that is borrowing requirements of the government, increased between 2019-20 and 2020-21 and decreased in 21-22. So revenue deficit has shown the same trend, fiscal deficit has shown the same trend, that they have increased and then come down in the last 2.5 years. So both revenue deficit and fiscal deficit have shown the same trend, and primary deficit, that is fiscal deficit minus interest payment, fiscal deficit minus interest payment, also increased between 1920 and 2021 and fell in 21-22. So from prelims point of view, the statement we learn is that all deficits show the same trend movement between 1920, 2021 and 21-22. That is how it shows in all this, it's in all this situation. That is the aspect. Now see, after having said this on revenue deficit, fiscal deficit and primary deficit, that is one part that you should always keep in mind. Then, the capital expenditure has shown a continuously rising trend. So if they ask us a question with respect to capital expenditure, then capital expenditure has shown a continuously rising trend. Please keep that in mind. Capital expenditure has shown a continuously rising trend. Capital expenditure has shown a continuously rising trend in last 3 years. It was 4 lakh crore in the revised estimate of 2019-20, 2021. It was increased to 6 lakh crore in the revised estimates of 21-22, and it is estimated at around 7.5 lakh crore in the estimate of 22-23. So capital expenditure has been continuously rising in the last 3 years. Then remember, when it comes to your tax revenue decreased again in 2021 but increased in 21-22 and expected to increase over 22-23. So tax revenue has again shown that trend where tax revenue for the central government showed an increase in 2021, and then we saw that the tax revenue declined, so in 21-22, declined in 2021 and expected to rise further in 22-23. So again tax revenue declined during the COVID period and then increased again in 22-23. That's the fifth trend you should keep in mind, that central tax revenue decreased in 2021 and increased in 21-22. Again, remember, most of these discussions we have done in the budget lecture. So I'm giving you the basic conclusion of what we see in the trend rate. One thing, please understand this, one thing which I would like to highlight, which the survey says, and quite correctly so, is that corporate tax rates, tax collection has increased significantly. Corporate tax collection has increased significantly, and the survey says that that is because of three major factors. Again, from your prelims point of view, these are the between the line things that we should know. These are the between the line things that we should know. In fact, it says that corporate tax collection increased by 90.4% compared to 2020-21 and even 22.5% compared to 2019-20. So even if we compare it to 2019-20, corporate tax collection is higher than what it was even in 2019-20. So the revival is more than sufficient there. And they say that this corporate tax collection has increased significantly because of a reform by giving tax concession. So they say that the reduction in tax rates that the government did in 2019 is now giving returns. जो टैक्स रेट का रिडक्शन हुआ है 2019-20 में, उसका जो रिटर्न है वो अब आ रहा है और सरकार को बेनिफिट्स मिल रहे हैं. So the reduction in tax concession or tax rate by giving tax concessions to the corporate is resulting in more reporting and higher level of tax revenue generation on corporate tax by the government. The second thing that they suggest is higher profit earned by corporates. That corporates have earned higher profits and that is resulting in higher tax collection. That higher profit earns by corporate and that can result also, or that has resulted also in higher tax collection. And the other thing they say is more formalization of the economy. You know, the third thing that they suggest is that with GST reforms and other changes, with the structural reforms of the pandemic, there is more formalization of economy. More and more companies are now registering themselves. So more formalization of economy. That more and more companies are registering themselves, leading to higher level of corporate tax collection. तो इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में ये एक इंपॉर्टेंट बात है जो आपको दिमाग में रखना है कि अगर कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स कलेक्शन की बात हो तो ये तीन कारण इकोनॉमिक सर्वे देते हैं. दैट टैक्स कंसेशंस, द टैक्स रिफॉर्म्स डन इन 2019-20 where the central government reduced the tax rates for many corporates, especially the smaller ones, higher profits earned by the corporates and better formalization of the economy. So this is the reason why corporate tax rate has been corporate tax collection has been relatively high in Indian economic system. So that is another thing that they mention while making these discussions. And corporate tax has been showing a very significant growth and that is the reason it has found a mention in the survey. In fact, apart from corporate tax, the other thing that shows a high significant growth is GST. And the survey says that is again because of formalization and avoiding tax evasion. You know, another significant growth is observed in GST. You know, so another significant growth in GST, where it is 36% above 2020-21 and 14% above even 2019-20. So GST is pretty high again. That even with respect to a normal year, GST has gone significantly higher, suggesting that again better tax compliance, better trails, better records maintenance, avoiding the evasion of tax, all that has played a role in improving GST collection over the period. So the survey says that the tax buoyancy is quite sufficiently high. You know, the survey says that tax buoyancy is quite high in this year. You know, high tax buoyancy. Again, if you recall our budget lecture, you will recall I had explained this to you. Percentage change in tax revenue compared to percentage change in GDP. Percentage change in tax revenue compared to percentage change in GDP. So high tax buoyancy is another thing that the survey has recorded. High tax buoyancy is another thing that the survey has recorded. So it says that high tax buoyancy, that is percentage change in tax revenue, जो आपका tax revenue बढ़ा है, is greater than percentage change in GDP. So they say that is a welcome thing that has seen, which has increased government's overall revenue by a great extent. it has increased government's overall revenue by a great extent. Thank you all for joining me. Maybe there is some technical issue you are facing with audio lagging, but I suggest that rather than not having a session or changing track, we can keep having it, because end of the day it's about you listening to me and knowing things. So I hope you will be better off there. Now see, when you look at it, the other thing that they have said is that excise duty doesn't come into this. Booster 2.0, excise duty doesn't come in here. Excise duty is separate, and excise duty increased between 1920 and 2021, but the increase in excise duty in 21-22 is very subdued, which the survey also notices, because the government, because of rising oil price, had to give a concession and reduce excise duty by 10 rupees in December 2021. So, November 2021. So, excise duty has not picked up as much this year compared to earlier. GST and corporate tax have picked up. Mind you, the GST has picked up so high that the direct tax to indirect tax ratio is going towards indirect tax. Like at the moment, we have 49% of total tax collected as indirect, 51% as direct. But just 4-5 years back, it was 45% indirect tax and 55% direct tax. So the direct tax share in total tax collection is comparatively reduced, because GST has started increasing a lot. And then the excise duty, of course, on petroleum products has played another big role in increasing the share of indirect tax in India's overall tax collection. So again, remember, indirect tax rates, tax collection has increased in India mainly because of GST and because of excise duty. But that doesn't mean direct tax has gone down. It only means it has gone slower than the indirect tax collection. Okay, thank you all for giving me the thumbs up, on audio and so on. By more reporting, Shubham, reform by giving tax concession leads to more reporting. And since there is more reporting, that gives you high growth. That is the aspect of it. Also remember, among major subsidies of India, then I take you into expenditure trends. The next thing I discuss with you is expenditure trends. Revenue expenditure has increased. Revenue expenditure has increased, but at a lesser rate than capital expenditure. Capital expenditure has increased at a more significant rate. So both revenue expenditure and capital expenditure have gone up, but capital expenditure has increased at a much faster rate than revenue expenditure. Also remember, among total subsidies given, among all subsidies maximum subsidy is on food, and this I'm using the budget. I'm not only using economic survey, because economic survey gives us numbers till only November. So I'm using the budget here. So maximum subsidy is on food, then fertilizer, and then petroleum. Now petroleum subsidy is mostly on LPG and kerosene. Petroleum subsidy is mostly on LPG and kerosene, and that is very low now, to the extent that government plans to phase this out. सरकार का प्लान है कि केरोसिन की सब्सिडी खत्म कर दी जाए और एलपीजी की सब्सिडी को भी कम किया जाए, तो ज्यादा सब्सिडी फूड पर है और फर्टिलाइजर पर है. So if they by chance in the prelims they ask you a question to to put the subsidies sectors in India in ascending order or descending order, then food, fertilizer, petroleum. That is how the subsidy should be put. In economic survey they corroborated. They give you this number that subsidies have been given in that manner. Also they have said that capital expenditure has been continuously rising, and that is another thing that they have highlighted. Then remember, there is another thing that you should keep in mind, that long-term trends when it comes on the central, state and general government finances, I have already told you the central government tax revenue has continuously been rising, as a percentage of GDP. When you look at it, the gross tax revenue has fluctuated, but in total absolute amount, it has continuously increased. So these are the two trends in expenditure you should keep in mind. Then in the survey, they ask you another thing as long-term trends in government expenditure. Long-term trends, and ये प्रीलिम्स में बहुत कॉमनली पूछा जाता है, और इसका जो सोर्स है वो इकोनॉमिक सर्वे ही होता है. ये सवाल बहुत ही कॉमनली प्रीलिम्स में पूछते हैं कि पिछले 5 साल में टैक्स का क्या हुआ, पिछले 5 साल में फिस्कल डेफिसिट का क्या हुआ, और इसका सोर्स जो है वो इकोनॉमिक सर्वे होता है. That is the source of it per se. Sure, Tushar, I will. Not necessarily, Sanjay. High capex doesn't necessarily lead to high ICOR. Now see, when we look at this again, when we look at the long-term trends in government finance, कि क्या long-term trends हैं government finance के, तो कुछ बातें आप दिमाग में रखोगे. Revenue receipts have been consistently rising except 2020-21. Revenue receipts have been continuously rising except 2020-21. That is one. For the central government, revenue receipts continuously rising except 2020-21 when there was a slight fall. The fall was not huge, there was a slight fall. And the tax revenue of the central government, in absolute terms, it has continuously increased more or less or remained same. In terms of percentage of GDP, it has fluctuated. So tax revenue has shown consistent increase except a slight dip in 2019-20, but as a percent of GDP, it has fluctuated between 11%, 11.2% and 9.9%. It has fluctuated between 11%, approximately 11.2% actually, of GDP and 9.9% of GDP. So that is how the tax revenue has fluctuated in the last few years. So that is another thing that the survey mentions for us. Again, from exams point of view, this is sufficient for you to know with respect to tax and other revenues. Then remember the non-debt capital receipt, that is receipts which includes mostly disinvestment and recovery of loans. The non-debt capital receipts has fluctuated in the recent past and has come down in the last 2 years. The non-debt capital receipts, especially the receipt from disinvestment, has fluctuated in the recent past and come down in the last 2 years. So receipts from disinvestment and recovery of loans by central government, of course, has shown a fluctuating trend. Again, the trend has been up and down. The highest we saw in this was something that we observed in 2017-18, and after that it has become comparatively lesser. So 17-18 was the highest that we saw here. So again, it has shown a fluctuating trend. We have not seen huge expenditure collected here. So this is the basic idea that you should keep in mind on the trends part that they ask you. And please do not spend any major time reading through any of these parts. From your prelims point of view, these conclusions that I gave you in the last 2-3 slides will cover you. In mains, they will not ask you the trend result. So that is why if you can see these basic trends that I gave you in the recent last 2-3 slides, that should be sufficient from prelims point of view. Then they have given a box on evolution of disinvestment policy of the government, and they have said that disinvestment also has been calibrated, and government has tried Air India disinvestment they talk about, that Air India has been disinvested, and that is a good news, as economic survey says, because it says it also sets the trend for future. And they said even though the disinvestment target was 1,75,000 crore, till January the government has achieved 9,000 odd crore, and that was mainly because many big ticket disinvestment like IPO of LIC or BPCL disinvestment did not happen. But economic survey says that in the last 6-7 years, the government has created a more calibrated approach with Department of Investment and Public Asset Management, DPAM, being established to not only suggest on disinvestment but also on efficiency improvement of public sector. They also talk about the National Asset Monetization Pipeline, and they say that asset monetization has been identified under this, and that has been rolled out, and the asset monetization will take place not only through the method of public-private partnership, but asset monetization will also take place by capital market through real estate investment trust or infrastructure investment trust. So please understand this now, that the disinvestment policy of the government, disinvestment policy of the government has some typical features attached in it. One, identifying 4 industries as core, 4 sectors, sorry, not 4 industries, 4 sectors as core and strategic. 4 ऐसे सेक्टर्स आइडेंटिफाई किए गए हैं जिन्हें कोर और स्ट्रेटेजिक कहा जा रहा है. तो ये सेक्टर्स सरकार कहती है कि इनसे पब्लिक सेक्टर कभी भी नहीं हटाया जाएगा. From these sectors the public sector will never go away. So atomic energy, space and defense is one such sector. Again prelims के point of view से ये names हमें याद रहने चाहिए. So atomic energy, space and defense is one sector where public sector will always remain. So private sector will be allowed, but public sector will also remain. Transportation and telecommunication is another sector where government will always remain. There will be public sector in these units. So transportation and telecommunication is where government will always remain. Then another is, they talk about petroleum, coal and other minerals. That is another one. Power, petroleum, coal and other minerals. Power, petroleum, coal and other minerals. So again in minerals, metal industry, electricity generation, government will always remain. And then banking, insurance and finance. That's the other sector where they say that in banking, insurance and financial sectors. So they say these are our core and strategic sector. So government will always be present in these sectors. Government will always be present. Public sector presence will be maintained in these sector. Public sector's presence in sectors में कोई ना कोई public sector जरूर रहेगा. Public sector's presence will be maintained in these sectors. Rest all other sectors in the economy, public sector is not needed. That is what the government says, that in all other sectors of the economy, the government will gradually exit and public sector will not be needed. But in these sectors, public sector's presence will be maintained. So that is an important thing from the survey that we can pick up. Also remember, they have said that we are trying to disinvest, and the target was 1,75,000 crore, don't forget, last year. Now the budget has made a revised estimate of 78,000 crore for disinvestment. So budget has heavily revised disinvestment downwards. The budgeted estimate for 2021-22 was 1,75,000 crore. But the revised estimate in the budget that was presented on 1st February, the finance minister said that it is around it will be kept at around 78,000 crore, and for the current year, the given year 2022-23, it has been revised downwards to 65,000 crore. So again, from prelims point of view, please keep it in mind that when it comes to disinvestment targets that the government has set, they have revised it downwards. The budgetary estimate in case of disinvestment target, budgetary estimate for disinvestment in 2021-22 was 1,75,000 crore. The revised estimate for 21-22 was brought down to 78,000 crore, a big climb down if you ask me. And then the budgetary estimate for 22-23 has been fixed at 65,000 crore. So the box written in the survey becomes slightly incorrect. Survey says that government will pursue the policy of disinvestment and keep continuing disinvesting. But maybe the finance minister had other ideas and she actually reduced throughout. So the numbers don't suggest what the survey says, and that is what makes it relatively less important. Then of course, it is the talk where you have to keep in mind that national asset monetization pipeline is proposed, and under national asset monetization pipeline, the government says, under this national asset monetization pipeline, the government says that they will be targeting assets worth 6 lakh crore, the national asset monetization pipeline, and the government will be targeting assets of 6 lakh crore. And again, the survey from prelims point of view, please keep it in mind, the survey has identified the sectors. So they say that the maximum money will be generated from roads, 27%, followed by railways, 25%, followed by power, that is electricity generation units, which will be, the power sector, which will be approximately 15%, and oil and gas pipeline, which will be 8%. Oil and gas pipeline, which will be 8%. Please don't forget, the national asset monetization pipeline says that it is not about selling all the government asset, it is more about putting them on lease to earn revenue from them. The fifth is telecom at 6%. Again, टोटल पैसा जो आएगा नेशनल एसेट मोनेटाइजेशन पाइपलाइन में वो कुछ ऐसे सेक्टरली आएगा, तो आप थोड़ा दिमाग में रखोगे, अगर प्रीलिम्स में अगेन असेंडिंग ऑर्डर डिसेंडिंग ऑर्डर की बात करते हैं तो हमें पता होना चाहिए कि पैसे कहां से आ रहे हैं, कहां जा रहे हैं. सो दिस इज द नेशनल एसेट मोनेटाइजेशन पाइपलाइन स्टोरी. अगेन रिमेंबर, national asset monetization pipeline is government deciding to lease out the public sector asset, government deciding to lease out the government assets, the brownfield assets like roads for toll road, railway projects for railway lines and railway platforms, railway land, capital asset for the power sector assets like generation units, transmission units, oil and gas pipelines and for transmission of oil and gas, and telecom, like the government telecom units established, telecom towers established, which can be leased out, and then the government can earn money out of it, and the objective is that this money can be used to develop new assets which can be in far off areas, remote areas, and so on. Also, please remember, in the same context, the survey says that there will be two ways of asset monetization. There will be two ways of asset monetization. One way will be, where the survey says, one will be through public-private partnership. You know, that government will enter into a public-private partnership, and that way the asset will be leased out, and as it is leased out, there will be some money that can be generated. You know, so that is called direct contractual instruments. You know, इसके लिए एक और नाम यूज होता है, अगेन प्रीलिम्स के लिए याद रखना, डायरेक्ट कॉन्ट्रैक्चुअल इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स, कि सीधा आप एक प्राइवेट सेक्टर के साथ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में आए, उनसे एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट साइन किया और रिजॉल्व की अपनी चीजों को. सो डायरेक्ट कॉन्ट्रैक्चुअल instruments. That is one way of resolving it. And the second is by capital markets. अब कैपिटल मार्केट्स में क्या किया सरकार ने ट्रस्ट्स बनाए हैं, जैसे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इन्वेस्टमेंट ट्रस्ट. तो ये लोग अपने बॉन्ड्स इशू करेंगे जिसे कॉमन पीपल भी खरीद पाएंगे और पार्टिसिपेट कर पाएंगे मोनेटाइजेशन में. So National Highway Authority of India or Power Grid Corporation India Limited, they have already planned issuing bonds. You know, the two sectors which have already proposed it, National Highway Authority of India and Power Grid Corporation of India Limited, you know, they will issue their rights on assets through these trusts. तो ये मार्केट में बॉन्ड इशू करेंगे और उन बॉन्ड को बैकअप क्या होगा, इनका असेट. जैसे मान लो पावर ग्रिड कॉर्पोरेशन ऑफ इंडिया लिमिटेड ने कहा कि हम 50 करोड़ का बॉन्ड बेच रहे हैं. अब आप बॉन्ड बेच रहे हो, लोग खरीदेंगे तो किस शर्त पे खरीदेंगे, क्या बात उसको बैकअप दे रही है, उसकी सिक्योरिटी क्या है. तो ये कहेंगे ये जो हमारे ट्रांसमिशन लाइंस हैं, ये जो हमारे जनरेशन कंपनीज हैं, हम इसके बेसिस पर ये बॉन्ड इशू कर रहे हैं. इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि जनरेशन कंपनी बेच दी गई या ट्रांसमिशन कंपनी बेच दी गई. इसका मतलब आप इन्वेस्टर को अश्योर कर रहे हो कि आपका पैसा नहीं डूबेगा, हम आपके पैसे को लगाएंगे प्रोडक्शन एक्टिविटी में और लौटा देंगे आपको बॉन्ड की मैच्योरिटी पर. सो दैट इज द आइडिया of monetizing the public asset, and common people can buy these. You know, the normal people can buy, the individuals can buy these, and so even individuals can participate in the monetization program of the government. So they say that apart from that, you know, there is monetization of core assets which is steered by Niti Aayog, mainly involving land. You know, the initiative of monetizing the other assets. So land monetization is what they are talking about, and they say that government realizes that we don't have an expertise in land monetization, so a special institution has been created so that land can be monetized without incurring loss. So land monetization is another thing that they are talking about, and a special institution, a special purpose vehicle will be created to get the right value of land. You know, land monetization through a special purpose vehicle. Special purpose vehicle का मतलब होता है एक specific institution आपने create किया जिससे कि land monetization continuously हो सके. So this is land monetization through a special purpose vehicle. Land monetization through a special purpose vehicle. You know, they will have the capacity and the expertise to do that, and this will be called National Land Monetization Corporation. You know, this will be called National Land Monetization Corporation. तो ये एक स्पेसिफिक कंपनी बनाई जाएगी जिसमें एक्सपर्ट्स होंगे जो लैंड को मोनेटाइज करना एफिशिएंटली कोशिश करेंगे. सो नेशनल लैंड मोनेटाइजेशन कॉर्पोरेशन टू बी क्रिएटेड for with expertise to monetize the land holding. So again, this is important from survey's point of view, and this will have 100% government of India ownership. You know, this special purpose vehicle is 100% government of India ownership, and they have been given, it has been established with you know, the share capital of 5,000 crores. You know, and that is the individual share capital. So there is a share capital कि जो initial capital के साथ जो इनको establish किया गया है 5,000 करोड़ रुपए, ताकि लैंड को खरीदने में, बेचने में, मोनेटाइज करने में ज्यादा दिक्कत ना आए. So that is their authorized share capital. This is their authorized share capital, the authority to raise capital up to this value. उनको अलाउड है कि शेयर्स के थ्रू जो मनी वो रेज करें वो 5,000 करोड़ तक कर सकते हैं. ये बॉक्स इंपॉर्टेंट था, इसलिए मैंने आपको इसका एक सिनॉप्सिस दे दिया. दिस बॉक्स वाज इंपॉर्टेंट, सो आई गेव यू अ सिनॉप्सिस ऑफ इट. देन रिमेंबर द अदर थिंग दैट बिकम्स इंपॉर्टेंट इज द ट्रेंड with respect to the transfers they have been making to states. You know, on expenditures, I've given you the trend, and again the biggest trend that we see disturbing is interest payments rising a lot. You know, so if we look into another expenditure related trend, interest payments have been increasing continuously in India, and that obligation is another worrying trend that we see in this structural system. Government isn't disinvesting, correct? Special purpose vehicle, Amitesh, is any particular institution created to meet a specific purpose. That is the aspect. The trust has all the record of bonds of the property of the company, Shobit. You can't issue your bonds on your own. So it is via the trust that they are doing it. It is Deepam, Sanjay, Deepam. All right, it will be land owned by railways, land owned by roadway sector, Ram Bahadur. That is all land that we are talking. Now, when we talk of it, the idea is that another thing that the survey picks up, again, the 15th Finance Commission part that they pick up, I don't think that makes a major question for you, so you can skip that. The another part that they pick up is the changes that we have seen in government debt, that what is the debt position of the central government. So that is another thing that we can look into. Debt position, ये सारे प्रीलिम्स ओरिएंटेड बातें हैं एक असेट मोनेटाइजेशन को छोड़कर, और वो भी प्रीलिम्स ओरिएंटेड बात भी थी. सो डेट पोजीशन ऑफ सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट. सो व्हेन यू लुक एट द डेट पोजीशन ऑफ सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट, कि सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के जो लोन्स हैं वो कैसे बढ़े, तो एक तो आता है इसमें पब्लिक डेट. पब्लिक डेट हुआ सरकार ने जो लोन लिया अपने देश में और बाहर. So that is one thing that is called public debt. The loan taken by government within the country and outside. And public debt has shown an increasing trend. Increasing trend in public debt, which stands at approximately 105 lakh crore. That is the trend we have seen in public debt, and it has continuously increased in the last 7 years. Continuously rising. पिछले 7 सालों में ये लगातार बढ़ता गया. इस पब्लिक डेट के 2 components होते हैं. Internal debt, this public debt has 2 components. Internal debt मतलब कितना लोन आपने अपने देश में लिया. What loan have you taken in your own country? Now that internal debt is around 99 lakh crore, and this has also shown an increasing trend. The internal debt is 99 lakh crore, and we see again that it has shown a heavily increasing trend. So continuously rising applies on it. And the other is external debt, and if you see, the external debt of government is very low at the moment. If you see, the external debt of the government is very low at the moment, around 6 lakh crore. But this has also shown an increasing trend. Even the external debt has continuously shown an increasing trend. तो इंटरनल डेट भी बढ़ता रहा, एक्सटर्नल डेट भी बढ़ता रहा सरकार का. तो ये एक चीज है, ये एक कंपोनेंट है डेट का, जिसे हम कहते हैं पब्लिक डेट. So public debt consisting of internal debt and external debt. But government debt doesn't only consist of public debt. Government debt also includes the public account liabilities. That is the other liabilities that you see on public accounts. So it also includes public accounts. These are mainly, other liabilities, as we call it. Liabilities which are called extra budgetary borrowings. These are liabilities which are called extra budgetary borrowings. Extra budgetary borrowings के अंदर ये वो liabilities हैं जो public account पे pay करना है आपको. तो ये एक्स्ट्रा बजटरी रिसोर्सेज से अलग है. एक्स्ट्रा बजटरी रिसोर्सेज का मतलब होता है जो आपने बोरो किया फूड कॉर्पोरेशन ऑफ इंडिया, फर्टिलाइजर कॉर्पोरेशन ऑफ इंडिया, इनके जो ड्यूज आपने नहीं चुकाए वो हुए एक्स्ट्रा बजटरी रिसोर्स, या नेशनल स्मॉल सेविंग फंड. और पब्लिक अकाउंट्स पे लायबिलिटी हुई कि आपने कोई पब्लिक सेक्टर के से लोन लिया, उनको वापस नहीं किया, या पब्लिक अकाउंट पे कोई पेमेंट करनी थी वो आपने पेमेंट नहीं पूरी की. सो दैट इज योर अदर पब्लिक अकाउंट्स लायबिलिटी, and that is again, that has shown a fluctuating trend, but that was seen at around 12.74 lakh crore. Again, you don't have to remember the exact value, but just the trends. So that has shown a fluctuating trend. The extra budgetary resources, the extra budgetary resources like national small saving funds, that is one extra budgetary resource. National small saving funds. Another extra budgetary resource is something like the payment dues to Fertilizer or Food Corporation of India. This we see the extra budgetary resources have shown a heavy decline in between 2014 to 17, but after that till 2020-21 we see them rising again. In the provisional estimates we see them rising again. So they again show a rising trend. But in the last 2 years, 21-22 and 22-23, the government has been trying to control it by making payments to Fertilizer Corporation of India, payments to Food Corporation of India. So in that case, extra budgetary resources have shown declining trend, and this year in fact they were almost negligible in last 2 years, that is 21-22 and 22-23. In last 2 years they show a declining trend, 21-22 and 22-23. So this is what public debt portfolio suggests. From this year a very important change has been brought, that is 21-22. The government brought a very important change which RBI notified in November-December, that is the retail direct scheme. So private, this question has been exhausted in last year's prelims, but you can keep few things in mind, that in 2021-22 RBI introduced retail direct scheme, that now individuals can participate in government bond market. RBI introduced the retail direct scheme, that is government can participate in individual bond market and government bond market, the individuals can be a part of it. So this is for accessibility of retail investor, accessibility of retail investor in government bond market or government securities market. So this has been introduced, and that's a very big change. This is the first time that this has been done, and the government, to facilitate it, has said that there will be the retail investors will be able to open a retail direct gilt account with an online portal, and this will help the retail investors to participate. So this will be through retail direct gilt account. This will be through the retail direct gilt account that the investors are allowed to participate. Minimum 10,000 and maximum 2 crore rupees worth of security can be used by them. That is the aspect here. It is not included in fiscal deficit, Anirudh. Well, we should have the intention to start borrowing from abroad, without any doubt. Thank you, Tasmia. Vikash, we will discuss it separately when I discuss industries with you, that why disinvestment target has been reduced by the government. Now see, India pays it at the end of the year, Prashant, normally the foreign exchange estimates. Now see, apart from that, the government has also said, that secondary market dealings can be done through negotiated dealing system order, NDSO, negotiated dealing system order matching system. So this is for primary market dealing, कि अगर पहली बार जब issue हुआ है तो retail investors खरीदें, and secondary market dealing is through negotiated, and this was the question that was asked in the prelims last year, so I don't think they will repeat it again, but this was through negotiated dealing system order matching. Negotiated dealing system order matching. So these are the two things that have been done over the period, primary and secondary market. So in this, again, the RBI's trading system will allow accessibility to retail investors who can then participate in all these events. So that is again an important thing that has been introduced. Now see, this is on mains oriented talk that they can ask, a prelims oriented talk that they can ask us from this chapter. Today I will keep you till here. We will again meet tomorrow. We will finish this chapter, the mains oriented talk, around 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. And then we will spend time on external sector, which is hardly a 35-40 minutes chapter. So tomorrow we will try finishing on 2 and 3, but 2 I am deliberately going slow and trying to make you internalize things, because this is something I believe is very important from both prelims and mains point of view, the fiscal policy indicators. तो आज मैंने आपको ज़्यादातर कोशिश की बताने की prelims के point of view से, कल की क्लास में करीब 20 मिनट लगाऊंगा मेंस के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से बातें बताने में, जो आगे की बातें हैं, जैसे स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स के लिए क्या किया सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने, टैक्सेशन रिफॉर्म्स क्या क्या किए हैं सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने, गवर्नमेंट के एक्सपेंडिचर को रैशनलाइज करने को क्या क्या किया है. सो वी विल टॉक अबाउट दैट इन 15-20 मिनट्स एंड देन पिक अप ऑन एक्सटर्नल सेक्टर द थर्ड चैप्टर एंड फिनिश दैट अप. इट्स नॉट अ वेरी टीडीएस चैप्टर, उसमें बड़ी छोटी छोटी चीजें हैं जो आपको पता रहनी चाहिए, एंड दैट is what we plan for tomorrow. So today I stop here. Enjoy your dinner. I'll see you tomorrow 9:30. We'll meet again. Thank you. Have a great evening. Bye bye. GOI can issue sovereign bond outside the country. They have a right to do that. Retail direct gilt account is created by the RBI, Rishi, to allow individual investors to participate in the market, in the government security market. Extra budgetary resources, Akanksha, are resources which are like loans taken from not paying the dues to Fertilizer Corporation of India or not paying the dues to Food Corporation of India. That is extra budgetary resources, or National Small Saving Organization payment. That is that. Thank you, Rishi. Thank you, Vaibhav. Well, I think around 6-7 sessions we will do for economic survey, Shubham. I'll keep meeting you every evening to finish this economic survey session. Thank you all of you for being here. Thanks a lot. Well, there is no guarantee, Rishabh, of a question from survey, but these concepts will help you in answering the questions in prelims exam. That is the actor. Thanks a lot, Anirudh. Thanks everyone. Yes, back tomorrow 8:30 we will be there. Thank you all. A great meal ahead for all of you. Thank you. So around 6-7 sessions more for survey. 6 sessions more is what I am planning. The last point, Shruti, was that we talk about government allowing retail investors to participate in buying government bonds. That ways. Take the notes, Vaishnavi, and both from prelims and mains point of view in the budget, I've given you the details. So just see how it affects the different sectors. That is from prelims point of view, and how tax, etc. is collected. That is from mains point of view. That kind of a thing. I will be conducting current affairs program for economy, Anjali, before the prelims. The last point of secondary market, Shruti, is that RBI has created this negotiated dealing system, order matching method, in order to make sure that you can sell your commodities, your securities in the secondary market, and the records will be maintained over here. So I hope you got that. But Arun, I didn't see your question, so if you could just repeat your question, please. Minimum 10,000 and maximum 2 crore. Thanks a lot, everyone. I hope you could gain from this, and I'll meet you again 8:30 tomorrow, and we'll go on from here. Thank you. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.